Hey everyone, what's up? Yeah, I just thought I'd come on here and let me check the right to the phone there. I just thought I'd come on here and, as you can read the thing below, if you can read the thing below, basically give you my thoughts on Slammiversary this year. Yes, I did order it. I was thinking about it, and honestly, I wasn't, too sure. And I think what intrigued me to do it was, I would watch the YouTube page of Impact and TNA, if you will, and I would see all these, and I would look at the highlights, the moments and stuff, and the matches and the stories that were behind them. I thought, oh, it looks pretty good. Looks like they're doing a great job here. And so I decided, what the heck, I got 2.5 days before my birthday, might as well give myself a little something. And that's what I did. That's what I did. I decided to order Slammiversary because it seemed that, Impact, TNA, Anthem, if you will, is putting a lot of stock in what they're doing. And what I find interesting about that, I'm just checking something right there. What I find interesting about it is how Anthem, when they first began, they had a few hiccups here and there. Of course, the whole Hardy thing, and then they worked that out and stuff. Have really lived up to what the last pay-per-view they had meant, and that's Redemption. And ever since Redemption, they've basically picked themselves up. They've gone and done things that you wouldn't think a wrestling promotion that's trying to be the second biggest promotion in the world, or in the States anyway, as well as be possibly a future competitor to WWE, would be able to do. But they did it. They've been doing it, I should say. And that's the fact that they are acknowledging the promotions. Not saying WWE's not doing that when they have to, but Impact's acknowledging not just promotions they're partnered with, but or associated with, but they're also acknowledging promotions that they're not associated with, like Ring of Honor and New Japan. So that's pretty cool to see that on their part. I mean, Impact, of course, is partnered with all these other promotions around the country, like Defy, up in Seattle, PWG, Big Time Wrestling, APW, Rise, just to name a few. And the fact that they're going out of the way to showcase not just that talent, but their talent along with them in these crossover events is amazing. It really is. And the fact that this is something that WWE's not doing. Not even Ring of Honor does it, but Ring of Honor only does it with New Japan and maybe a few UK promotions, and that's about it. Impact's saying, hey, you know what? We're going to open our doors and we're going to welcome any other promotion that wants to work with us, as well as at the same time we're going to give them a worldwide platform to showcase their talent. And that's what they're doing through things like Twitch. I mean, heck, this weekend they have an event. They're partnering with somebody. I don't know who it is, but they're partnering with another indie promotion to do a crossover event on Twitch this I think this Friday or this Saturday. And then in mid-August they're doing the same thing again with another promotion, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, Impact right now under Anthem Sports and Ed Norham and whoever else they got. I mean, Don Callis is working with them. I think right now, from a positive standpoint, they're making all the right moves. They're making all the right decisions to give fans what they originally had promised when this company began 16 years ago, and that's an alternative to any other promotion. ocean out there, most likely WWE. Heck, one fan pointed out that they kind of threw shade at the WWE on Twitter by acknowledging the fact that fans were kind of disappointed with Extreme Rules. You know, like, hey, there were some goodness in Extreme Rules and some good matchups, but overall it wasn't exactly, the kind of event you would want. It's like basically they're throwing shade at WWE for kind of being mediocre to disappointing in the pay-per-view events. So, and, heck, even a fan asked them that, and Impact was quick to say, "Oh, we're not throwing shade at anybody," and get a little wink emoji to kind of acknowledge that, yeah, in a sense they were. But anyway, yeah, I saw Slammiversary, and one thing I'm going to praise them about is they're doing the right thing right now. They're doing the right thing. And what I mean by doing the right thing is they're basically either holding the pay-per-views and the television tapings in smaller venues, or in smaller venues, or they're staying put in what's known as a home base, Universal Studios. And I think strategically, easy for me to say, I think this is a good move on their part, because you're mainly, because I think Ed Norham, Don Callis, and everybody else involved in this at Anthem and within Impact as well, realized that, hey, we can't sell out these major venues like we tried to do in the past under the Dixie Carter administration, under different management. We can't do that. So they're realizing, well, they can't do that. What's the better way to try to make it feel like a big deal, but not be disappointed in attendance? And I think by partnering with all these other promotions like Rise and Defy and all of them, and having these cross-promotional events, I think they're realizing that, hey, they're having success somewhat. People are talking about them somewhat by just being in these smaller venues. Why not give that a shot? And that's what they're doing, I think. And that's what they're doing, obviously, I should say. And that proved it here with Slammiversary. This year they had Slammiversary at the Rebel Entertainment Complex in Toronto. It's kind of a new facility, and I looked up the pictures, and it looks really nice. It really does. It's held live events, other live events, but mainly it's like a club. It's like a nightclub in a sense. Mainly its selling point is it's an entertainment, of course, complex, and it's held concerts there, other live events, but mostly it's been like a nightclub. Like if you want to celebrate New Year's, you go to the Rebel in Toronto to do that. And I like that. I like that concept. It kind of is very reminiscent of ECW. ECW started out small, stayed in one area, then expanded and went to all these other venues that were small enough to where they knew they could get a decent size, if not sell-out crowd. And I think that's what they're realizing. I think that's what Don Callis, from his time in ECW, that's the knowledge he's passing on to the people at Impact and Anthem Sports. Like, hey, you want a huge crowd, you want to sell out, you want energy, here's what you do. Let's go to these smaller venues, we'll get sellouts, and we'll get a very energized crowd. And like I said, he probably even suggested, hey, partner up with all these other people, all these other promotions that do the same thing, and kind of get an idea and a feel of what you can do. And that's what they've been doing. And tonight, tonight, even though it was a smaller venue, I think they did a great job. It made it feel, even though the crowd was small and everything, you wouldn't really know that because it felt like a big deal. It felt like a big event. It felt like something that was worthy of being on the levels. Well, I wouldn't say of a WrestleMania, but it had that kind of an aura of being like a SummerSlam, of what a SummerSlam and a Starrcade and a Bash and a Super Brawl used to be like in the past. And if you're an ECW enthusiast, it had the feeling of a November to Remember. It had the feeling of a heat wave that got properly built up. You knew it basically had that kind of energy, kind of had that feel. And here's the thing: you wouldn't even have to follow the product, if you will, that much. If you're trying to still get back into it and try to find these alternatives, you wouldn't have to follow too much. They put on tonight. They put on before every match. They had a video package, a video hype package of what was to come. And if you just watched that package, you knew exactly what you were in for. You knew exactly what the story was and what you were in for. And I will say this: Impact Wrestling hit it on all cylinders tonight. And Dalyxman, when you watch this, you will see why people loved this pay-per-view. And you know what? This may sound crazy, but WWE, to me, can definitely take some lessons from this. They really can. So anyway, tonight, Slammiversary happened. Now, I'm not going to say they didn't have a few hiccups. Technical-wise, and camera-wise, at times, it did kind of have some hiccups, but not too much. I think some person on Twitter told Dalyxman that there were some hiccups, but those hiccups were overshadowed by the great wrestling, the great show, the great storytelling that we got. It was everything else that was good outshined all that was anything that was negative, and it showed. It really did. It really showed. The announced team tonight was Josh Matthews and Don Callis, and they did good. You know, you can throw as much shade as you want to Josh Matthews, and you have the right to do that, but I think Josh tonight really brought it. I think Josh Matthews did a great job. Don Callis really helped out in his commentary. I think they did a very good job. So Josh Matthews, I think, is improving. He's really improving as being a play-by-play commentator, play-by-play announcer. So who knows? Maybe WWE might bring him back someday after he's gotten a few more years. Who knows? Anyway, let's talk about the event. We start out with an international fatal four-way. We have Johnny Impact, John Morrison, taking on Ray Phoenix, or Phoenix from Lucha Underground in AAA. The Bones Soldier, Taishi Ishimori of the Bullet Club in New Japan. So there's something. So that might be a hint of things to come, as far as partnerships go. And originally it was going to be Rich Swann, but he suffered an injury, a concussion, something at an MLW, Major League Wrestling taping. And so he got replaced, smart move on Impact's part, by P.D. Williams. And even as a last replacement, P.D. Williams shined in this match. Everybody shined in this match. I mean, this was just a match that you want to talk about a match that will set the tone and light the company, light the event, light the crowd on fire. This did it. This event did it because the match was all over, yes, but it was back. But this was one of those fatal four-ways that was back and forth. It's like you didn't know who was going to win. I mean, obviously you knew possibly who would win since it was announced he would be making his return, and that was Johnny Impact, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo. But this match was just back and forth. It was just crazy. I mean, heck, there was one time where all four men were hitting kicks, super kicks, and I think Ray and John hit each other in the head with kicks, and all four men were down. I mean, this thing was just back and forth. It was just nuts. It was crazy. Counter moves, you name it. This was the kind of fatal four-way that, as someone like Dalyxman and OTR Essential or anybody else would say, really is the kind of match you want to have open your show. It gets the crowd on fire, and it did just that. In the end, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, Johnny Impact wins the match by hitting Starship Pain on Phoenix. And yeah, great start. Heck of a start, I should say, to the event. Heck of a start. Heck of a start. Like I said, Johnny Impact, John Morrison hit the Starship Pain on Phoenix and got the win. So if you're a Lucha Underground fan, you got to see Johnny Mundo pin Phoenix. So pretty damn cool. Next match we had was Ali taking on Tessa Blanchard. Very good match. Very good women's singles match or knockout single match. You could tell in a sense that when Tessa was dominating, that this was going to be going Tessa's way. So even though some might say, oh, it was a squash match overall, really, let me ask you this. If you think it was a squash, then why was it so competitive? I mean, both women kicked out of the finishers, of the signatures, and each woman showed frustration. Great storytelling. It's like the storytelling there was, what is it going to take to put this woman away? So in the end, Tessa Blanchard reverses, I think, Ali's finish. I think Ali was going for best super kick ever, or the Alabama driver, or something like that. And Tessa reversed it into the DDT, got the win, and Tessa Blanchard remains not unbeaten, but remains strong in potentially her goal. And I think her goal basically is she's going to become Knockouts champion. I think that's going to happen possibly at Bound for Glory, if not sooner. It's going to happen either at Bound for Glory or it's going to happen on a special edition of Impact. I've got that feeling. Next up, we had Tommy Dreamer and Eddie Edwards in a House of Hardcore match. Very good match. Definitely hardcore. You know, I love what they've done with Eddie Edwards here. I know some people might be a little turned off, like, why did you do this to Eddie Edwards? If you're not going to have the American Wolves as a team anymore, and you don't want to lose someone like Eddie Edwards possibly to your competition, WWE or Ring of Honor, you give him an opportunity to grow. You give him an opportunity to change. And this new metamorphosis he's gone through is definitely the change he needed. This match was as violent as you would think. Well, wasn't as violent as you would hope, but it got violent. You know, Eddie did bleed. He ended up bleeding after Tommy hit him. Tommy used a staple gun on him. I think he used it on him twice. So overall, the storytelling, the psychology of this match is what really sold it. It looked like basically Tommy would be dominating, but then Eddie would come back. In the end, basically what happened is Tommy brought in a table, brought in some lighter fluid, was going to get ready to set it on fire, and Eddie is able to stop him. He's able to reverse what Tommy has planned for him. A chair gets set up, and Eddie hits a Boston Knee Party, a Shining Wizard, into the chair, onto Tommy Dreamer, and gets the win. Now, what happens after the match is great storytelling, because it's like all of a sudden, it's like Eddie wants to go back and try to finish off Tommy, but then he starts to break down. And the storytelling there is perhaps this is what he needed. He needed that vindication to prove that he can be as violent, or it's like this was sort of like a vindication. Like this was a cleansing for Eddie Edwards to kind of start to slowly move on from this whole Sami Callihan situation. And heck, it took his wife coming out, Alicia, to help him out, to kind of tell him, hey, shake his hand, he's offering his hand to you. But at the same time, what did Tommy do? Tommy, he did back him up with the kendo stick a little bit. But what did Tommy do in the end? He shook his hand, and then he passed the kendo stick over to Eddie. In other words, passing the torch, saying, you are exactly what you say you are. You are the new innovator of violence. So, pretty cool moment there. I mean, honestly, I thought Alicia was going to come into the ring and low blow Tommy, and you find out that both her and Eddie are in the cahoots of this. But no, it was actually more of a passing of the torch. So like I said, it felt like, storyline wise, it felt like a cleansing for Eddie Edwards to finally slowly move on from this thing with Sami Callihan. You know, because, you know, to me it just felt like that, and they did a good job. They did a good job here, story-wise, and the match was okay as well, so definitely a good job on Impact's part. Next up, and I'm looking over here at the time. Next up, we had Su Yung defending the Knockouts title against Madison Rayne. Pretty much, I will say this. Madison brought it right off the beginning. You had all the undead brides coming out with a coffin. Su Yung coming out of the coffin was a good visual. But you kind of knew in a sense that, I'm not going to say the match was bad. The match was okay. The match was good. The match was good for what it was. I mean, Madison Rayne, brought it to Su Yung at times. Su Yung brought it to Madison. One thing I liked about it was how the commentators were selling the whole mandible claw. It's like because what it is basically what I'm trying to say is what I liked about it is how the commentators sold the mandible claw deal. It's like they would basically say that whenever Su Yung puts on this dirty glove, this bloody glove, and sticks her fingers, the mandible claw, into somebody's throat, that's pretty much over. And that's exactly how the match ended. Madison tried a couple of times to avoid it, but in the end, she tries, I think, to go for a finisher of hers, and it gets reversed right into the mandible claw. She passes out, and then she gets put into the coffin afterwards, thus sealing another victim for Su Yung. So, I'll give Impact credit. They're definitely building Su Yung up as to be this unstoppable knockout. And I will say this, what they've done with her, vignette-wise and segment-wise when it comes to Madison or any one of her opponents, really good job. So definitely, I'll give Impact a lot of credit. They definitely have a winner here in Su Yung. How long does she keep the championship? I don't know. I will. So I'm guessing that they're setting her up. I'm guessing they're setting her up for a title defense and loss, not against Allie, but against Rosemary. I think that's what's going to happen. Rosemary, I think, is either going to return this week at the tapings. It'll also take place at the Rebel Complex, or she's going to return probably at the next Special Impact broadcast, whenever that might be. Whether it's Against All Odds, No Surrender like event or something, or Lockdown like event, something. I've got a feeling Rosemary's coming back, and they're setting up for Su Yung, Rosemary, possibly some kind of anything goes like matchup between the two. So. But okay, guys, sorry about that. Well, I did that because my mom was on the phone with my sister, so I figured I had some time. But yeah, getting back to the review here. Yeah, as I was saying, I like what they're doing with Rosemary. I mean, not Rosemary, but Su Yung. Again, her match with Madison was okay. It was good. The storytelling I liked. I did, like I said, the storytelling on how they were building up the fact that anytime Su Yung puts on this bloody glove or something like that, that's basically a prelude to the mandible claw that she uses as a finisher, or one of her finishers. And yeah, basically Su Yung, basically throughout the match, towards the end, Madison tries to avoid it, and Madison gets ready, I think, to hit her Rainmaker or Raindrop finisher or something, and Su Yung is able to reverse it right into the mandible claw, which she ends up using to win. And in the end, she ends up putting Madison Rayne in a casket, the very casket that she emerged out of before the start of the match. My thought process was, when she was going to do it, just the way they were filming it, that as soon as she plops her in, that as soon as they open it, Rosemary was going to pop out. I thought that, okay, she's going to slam the door shut on Madison Rayne after they did it. And basically, after they shut the door, that's when, you know, Su Young's standing on it. That's all of a sudden, that's when you see something like the door maybe start to open, and Su Young coming, you know, gets knocked off or slips off, and all of a sudden, instead of Madison Rain being in there, all of a sudden out comes Rosemary. I thought that would have worked. I think some people might say that's the only critical thing you would want to put on this matchup was the aftermath, and how they could have built, used this possibly as a foundation to build towards Rosemary and Su Young. But they didn't do that, and in the end, like I said, Su Young wins. But I do, and I like I said, I like what they're doing with Su Young here, because they're building her up as a knockout that cannot be beat. It's going to take someone as weird, as dark, as crazy, as unpredictable, as dead, if you will, as she is, to knock her off. And I think we're going to get, and I think honestly it's going to be Rosemary. I think either Rosemary makes a return at the tapings this week, which will also take place at the Rebel Entertainment Complex, or she's going to make her return on a special edition of Impact, whether it's a No Surrender themed edition or what, or whatever it may be, or whatever they have planned. I've got a feeling she's going to make her return, and that's going to build towards Bound for Glory. Speaking of Bound for Glory, I think it was either before or after the next match they announced that Bound for Glory would be happening on October 14th from New York City and from the Melrose Ballroom in New York. And this, I don't know how old Melrose is. Hold on, let me check for a second. See me, I typed it up. Sorry for this. Hold for a sec. Let's see. It doesn't really say when it was opened exactly. Like a Wicca on that or something. A wiki, if you will. Let me check them. See, it looks like, according to this, it was built around 2013 and 14, so it's not that old. It's about 4, 5, maybe 6 years old. Maybe you guys can correct me on that in the comments. But yeah, they made the announcement that it's going to show up at the Melrose Ballroom. Bound for Glory is going to take place at the Melrose Ballroom. Capacity-wise, seating-wise, it sits about 800 people. And standing wise it sits, I think it said that standing wise it does about 800 people, and then seating wise it's about 450, which isn't too bad. It's not too bad at all. So yeah, seating wise 450, standing wise about 800. And one person replied to a comment that I did on Andre Colbert's video where he talked about it, and he said that's not bad, for Bound for Glory to do, for Bound for Glory to have an event there. Now I know someone like maybe the Slag Daddy, maybe Dalyxman will look at this and be like, seriously, you're going to hold your WrestleMania, your Starrcade in this small venue? And I think, like I mentioned earlier, basically I like this idea. I think Don Callis is helping out with the booking and all that, because he's realizing, look, we can't just have Bound for Glory at Universal Studios. We can't have Bound for Glory at a big venue, or at least semi-big venue. it's not going to work. If you want to get this company on the map and you want to book those bigger or semi-bigger venues, we need to start small, at least mediocre or medium size. And I think this works out fine for them. I mean, heck, MLW, because I was looking it up online, and they have all these pictures. Google has all these pictures when you're looking at the map and everything, where it's located. Sorry, there's a phone ringing there. Just checking through. Like you're saying, I know people like Dalyxman and OTR Central might say something, but like I said, I was looking online at Googling it, and basically MLW, Major League Wrestling, has held an event there, so it's not no stranger to wrestling. So they might have to configure it just a little bit more for Impact, but we'll have to wait and see what they put Impact when they do Bound for Glory. But I think it's a good decision because, like I said, you don't want to, try to book a bigger, if not semi-bigger venue and not sell it out. I know some people might say, well, what about Manhattan Center? They could have done that, but I think Manhattan Center may have been booked. So, at least the Hammerstein Ballroom, I think, was booked. So, this is the next best thing. It's the newest complex. And I like this. I like what they're doing here because it allows more interaction in a sense with the fans, gets them more up close with the action. And it shows that Impact wants to at least book the venues that are most recently built, the newest venues out there to have those shows. So, yeah, Bound for Glory is going to be taking place on October 14th in New York, in Queens, New York. In the center of New York City at Melrose Ballroom. So if you guys live in New York and you want to check out some wrestling in October, there you go. The next matchup we had was surprisingly a good match between Brian Cage and Matt Sydal. A lot of people figured it'd be a squash, and it looked like it was going to be like that. Brian Cage did dominate a lot during this match, but it kind of evened out as we got into the middle of it. Matt Sydal really brought his A game, I will put it that way, during this match, and it was a great, we'll put it this way, it was a great big man, little man matchup, and gave us an idea of what was to come in the main event. So yeah, really went back and forth here. The ending came basically when Matt Sydal tried to go for another shooting star press, and he ended up eating the foot of Brian Cage, face first it looked like. Brian Cage was able to capitalize on that and hit the drill claw to win the match and the X Division Championship. And throughout this match, like I said, it was a great big man, little man matchup. Definitely a lot of good counters from Matt Sydal to some of Brian Cage's power moves throughout. He would go for the drill claw sometimes, the F5, stuff like that, and Matt Sydal would counter it perfectly. So he would counter it perfectly. I think there was even one time Brian Cage tried to go for something and Matt Sydal, turned it into a Dragon Khan Rana. Flip, kind of like a Dragon Khan Rana, which is basically a flip Hurricane Rana into a pin combination, and Cage kicked out. So overall, great matchup, really great matchup. A great big man, little man match, and Brian Cage ends up winning the X Division title. The reason I think they put it on Brian Cage is, one, they're trying to reestablish that it's not about weight limits, it's no limits deal. And by putting it on Cage, they're going to be doing that. So let's hope they give Brian Cage a good run. And I've got a feeling there's a rumor going around that Brian Cage put on Twitter that he said he was going to turn the X Division title into the Weapon X title. So that'll be interesting. I got a feeling his first opponent for the X Division title, because it's going to be going back to no limits, not weight limits, no limits, it looks like. Oh, it looks like it's going back to that no limit, not about weight limits, no limits deal. I got a feeling his first challenge was going to be Congo Kong. And that would be interesting to see, but primarily what people would perceive as a cruiserweight title, a light heavyweight or junior heavyweight title being defended in this manner. But like I said, I think they're trying to go back to the whole, it's not about weight limits, it's no limits deal. Next up, we have the 5150 street fight between the OGs, Hernandez and Homicide with Eddie Kingston, against LAX of Santana Ortiz with Conan. Great matchup here. Great physical, hardcore style match. Both teams really shined here. Both teams really shined. Brought their A game, aiming stuff. So, really good stuff. There was a moment going close towards the end of the match where Homicide hits this flipping plunger through the ropes onto, I think, Santana Ortiz, through a table set at ringside, set up on the barricade at ringside. Crazy spot. Again, they just went all over the place. They went up onto the rampway, wrestled there. They used, looked like a ladder doing the match. They used ladders, trash cans, you name it, they used it. They used chains and everything. And again, like I said, both teams really shined. The OGs shined, showing they still had it. Hernandez really shined in this match. It's like there were moments where LAX would hit Hernandez, the Santana and Ortiz would hit Hernandez with trash cans and stuff, and then Hernandez would just shrug it off like, get that crap away from me, and just turn it around on them and beat them with the stuff, and just show off why he was dubbed Supermax originally in Impact. In the end, though, Homicide, he's getting ready to go for the Gringo Killer, it looks like, on Santana, and Conan gets up on the ring apron, distracts Homicide to the point that he tosses, right behind Homicide's back, a bag of thumbtacks to Santana, who's able to hit his finisher on Homicide onto the tacks to get the win. Well, he not just hits his finisher, but then he goes onto the top rope, hits a frog splash on Homicide to get the win. He lays him out, I think, with a driver, some kind of Michinoku-like driver onto thumbtacks. Then he goes to the top rope, hits a frog splash, and gets the win. And thus, LAX retains their tag team titles and wins the 5150. But they may win the battle, but they didn't win the aftermath, because in the end, Kingston gets in. Because in the end, what happens is Hernandez gets back in, Homicide gets back up, and they basically toss LAX out of the ring. Conan gets in, and then Kingston gets in, and he ends up leveling Conan with what looks like a slapjack in the back. Not a slapjack. And then you have Hernandez and Homicide holding Conan, and basically Kingston goes right behind him and hits him with another slapjack to the back of the head. Then what they do next is kind of interesting and all that. They take the Impact Tag Team Championships, and Kingston, King as he's called, spray paints OGs on the Impact titles, and they leave with the belts. Very reminiscent of NWO-like, where they're basically claiming the championships of their own because they're marking it with their signature, with the logos, with their name. So yeah, I guess they're going to continue this up till Bound for Glory or something, I'm guessing. There's no doubt that I think they're setting up the OGs to get the tag team titles, but when and where that happens is totally up to Impact. Right now, storyline wise, they have the belts. They pretty much painted the name on it, the logo, OGs on it, and just walked off with them. You know, kind of claiming it as their own. So, yeah. Really interesting situation there. Really interesting situation there. So let's see what we've covered so far. 4-way, Ali, Tessa, Dreamer, Edwards, Su Young, Madison, Brian Cage, Age, Matt, NL, 5150. I think there was one more match I think they had. I'm trying to... Let me check here. Oh yeah, we had... Oh my gosh. If you're a fan of Lucha Underground, this match was crazy. This match was definitely Lucha Underground coming to Impact. This was Pentagon Jr., known as Pentagon Dark in Lucha Underground, facing Sami Callihan, known as Jeremiah Crane in Lucha Underground. Mask versus hair. Oh, Dalyxman. Let me put it this way. This may make you want to watch Impact a lot more. Because this felt very Lucha Underground-ish. The way they built it with the vignettes, everything. This is very Lucha Underground-like. Because and the violence was just there. And they even emphasized that the officials were instructed during the match to be very lenient. And I mean very, very lenient. They were instructed to be very lenient. Holy crap. Were they ever? Were they ever lenient? Because this just was crazy as you can get. It was bloody. It was crazy. I mean, they did. Holy smokes. And I'll be back in a moment to talk about it. Okay guys, sorry again for the interruption, but anyway, like I was saying, if you're a fan of Lucha Underground, in a sense, then this is definitely a match you want to see. I mean, this match, for Mask was to say, I mean, like I was saying before, the referees were told to be very lenient. They pretty much emphasized that, the announcers, that is, the commentators, and boy did they ever show that leniency. And you want to talk about very being Lucha Underground-esque. This pretty much was Lucha Underground live and in person, and it got violent, it got bloody. You know, you had weapons in there, of course. You had chairs. I think you may have had, I don't think you had a table or anything, but you had chairs and stuff. And holy moly, one of the moments they had in there is Sami Callihan looks under the ring. It looked like he's looking for more chairs or something like that. People want more chairs. He tells fans, "Do you know what?" puts up his two middle fingers and tells people that you know what. So he goes to one end of the ring and he finds what he's looking for. And at first I'm thinking the skewers. Nope. The spikes. And we're talking the kind of spikes, and he even bangs them together to tell you that they're pretty much real. These are the spikes you put into the ground for tents or construction or something like that. And boy, do both him and Pentagon use these things, because before he does that, he's ripping at the mask of Pentagon, and then when he gets the spikes, Pentagon tries to prevent him from using it, but he ends up using it on Pentagon, and then a little after that, Pentagon gets a hold of them and he starts using them, and the way he uses it on Callahan is he ends up taking one spike, does that with a spike. Then he takes the bat of Callahan, ends up using that to do... I mean, they're basically stabbing each other with these... Oh my gosh. Woo! 5150 Street Fight was violent. House of Hardcore was violent. This, for what it was, outshined both of them. I mean, the fact that Pentagon Jr. was bleeding to the point that it was seeping out of the mask, seeping through the mask. Unreal. I mean, these guys just went crazy. There was a moment where Pentagon sits up two chairs, and they end up both sitting down in them and basically slapping each other and stuff. And oh shoot, oh, like I said, if you're a fan of Lucha Underground, this was Lucha Underground, live and in person. That's literally what it was. I mean, these guys just went crazy. These guys went back and forth on each other. They went nuts. Jake and Dave Chris tried to interfere. That backfired. There was a moment, well, it didn't totally backfire, but they got taken out by a chair by Pentagon. And then there's a moment, but that's enough to distract Pentagon where he gets blinded with some salt or powder by Callahan, to the point that Callahan throws this, and I think he kind of collapses down a little bit, and it gets to the point where Pentagon, he can't see, ends up grabbing the referee, knocking him down, and then thinking it's Sami Callahan, he ends up wrenching back on the referee's arm and breaks it. Literally, he breaks the referee's arm. Johnny Bravo, that's his name. Yeah, his name's Johnny Bravo, go figure. He ends up breaking the referee's arm because he's thinking it's Sami, and as soon as he gets his eyes cleared a little bit, after he does that, he realizes, he gets this look on his face like, oh crap, wrong person. But that's enough to give Callahan a little bit of an advantage. Not enough, because in the end, what happens is Pentagon hits him with the Pentagon driver. It's some kind of move, and Sami kicks out, and it shocks Pentagon. So Pentagon's setting up all these 4 chairs, and well, not Pentagon, but Sami's setting up these 4 chairs. He's gonna pile drive Pentagon on them. Pentagon is able to get out of it. He reverses it, turns it into a Pentagon driver onto the chairs to get the win. And this also takes place after he does get a bit of advantage and is able to get Sami in position to break his arm. And he does. He pulls it back, he pulls on his arm, breaks it, or at least strains it or something like that. And like I said, in the end, what happens is Pentagon hits the driver on Callahan on some chairs and gets the win. And it looks like, and basically the aftermath is, it looks like Sami's going to accept his fate. He does this. The Chris brothers come in, but they get taken out. And Sami's trying to run away. And I'm thinking, okay, Eddie Edwards has to come out to stop him, right? Eddie Edwards has to come out and stop him because, hey, this would be vindication. No, instead it's Phoenix. Phoenix comes out, basically trapping him. And then what's funny is Phoenix is coming out, and he's accompanied by security. And security rushes the freaking ring to keep OVE, to keep the Chris brothers down, to prevent them from, interfering again. And Callahan ends up getting his head shaven. He gets it cut, then shaved. people are chanting, "Do the beard next," and he's like, "No, no, don't give him any ideas." So yeah, Callahan ends up becoming bald. So this is going to be an interesting look. I mean, a lot of people feel he basically says he's the draw, he's the death machine, the Callahan death machine. Yeah, pretty much you're going to give him a look that could resemble something we don't. That people have compared James Mitchell to being. So it'll be really interesting where they go from here. I mean, Callahan even put out a tweet with Ronald McDonald on a face on a, I guess, a Burger King GIF, saying he's still standing, this is not over. So we'll have to see what he means by that. And then we get to the main event, which is Moose versus Austin Aries. They bring out Curtis Anderson, or Curtis Granson, or whatever his name is, from the Toronto Blue Jays to be the belt presenter. And this was a good match, really back and forth. Again, just like Cage and Seidel, very good big man, little man match. I mean, there were moments Austin tried to do stuff and to Moose, and nothing would work. I mean, these guys went back and forth. They went into the crowd several times. There was a moment where Moose got launched into the crowd, backdropped into the crowd by Austin Aries. Austin then goes to the top rope, dives into the crowd. There's a moment where Moose tosses Austin into the crowd from the ramp. It was, again, this was a good big man, little man matchup. Really good. Really good. Both guys brought their A games. I like the storytelling here that anytime Austin thought he had an opportunity to get a count-out victory, that as soon as he knocked Moose down on the arena floor, like, because they fought on the arena floor as well. And there were moments where Austin would get an offensive move in that would knock Moose down, and Austin, as soon as he did that, would get back in the ring and be like, "Okay, ref, count, quick," because it shows from a antagonist kind of heelish perspective of Aries' part. It's like, hey, if I can't beat this guy straight up, I have to beat this guy this way. I have to beat him somehow, and if the count is going to do it, it's going to do it. But yeah, both men go back and forth. Again, just a good big man, little man match, just like we had earlier with Cage and Seidel. In the end, Moose makes a mistake, or something like that. Aries is able to capitalize and hit a brainbuster on the floor. And Moose is able to get back into the ring to avoid a 10 count. When Aries has got this expression on his face like, what the heck? So Aries goes to get the belt, to use it on Moose to get a disqualification. Anderson comes up and grabs the belt away from him. And it looks like, and you're thinking, okay, this is going to be where Aries ends up losing. But nope. Aries is able to counter that, and he's able to hit a brainbuster in the middle of the ring, a second one, to get the win and the pinfall. And that's pretty much it. And Curtis comes in, hands him the belt. It's like, okay, you won. You did it fair and square. So, and Aries, being the heel guy he is, says, hey, get out of my ring. You did your job and you can get out. And we don't see no aftermath, a post-match attack. Aries just leaves. He just leaves the ring, showing everybody, see, I'm still the man. He still has the belt. So, yeah, that's pretty much how Bound for Glory, but Slammiversary ends. And you know what? Give it to Impact. They did a great job here. Really good job. From the opening bell to the end, very good. Each match in a sense, even the opener, was tremendous. It had great action to it, but it also told some great stories. Even the Fatal 4-Way told great stories, like the story of who's going to freaking win. These guys are basically killing each other out there. And I think I guess part of that story was, would Johnny Impact, be able to come back to Impact at Slammiversary and win the match? Would he be able to get a victory upon his return? So yeah, just great overall. Ali and Tessa was a good matchup, told a good story there. Momentum is kept for Tessa. Edwards and Tommy Dreamer, psychology in the ring, storytelling in the ring, great hybrid with the hardcore action we got. And the ending was great. Basically, a passing of the torch, as they even acknowledged on commentary. And it looks like Eddie's slowly getting back somewhat to who he was, because this had to be basically what he needed. Like I said earlier, this had to be like a cleansing for Eddie Edwards. So, who knows? Maybe will they continue him and Sammy? Maybe down the line, we don't know. Su Yung and Madison Rayne was okay. It was a good matchup. It definitely showcased Su Yung as being an unbeatable, unpredictable force. That basically it's going to take a special like knockout to beat her. Whether that's going to be the debuting Scarlett Bodex or whatever her name is this Thursday. Whether it's the debuting Scarlett that does it. Whether it's the returning Rosemary, which I think they're setting up for. When we get to Battle for Glory, who knows? But yeah, Su Yung looked really good, and I like what they're doing with her. And basically, I think they're building up to her and Rosemary at Bound for Glory. I really do. Brian Cage and Matt Sydal was a good big man, little man match. Great matchup there. Great storytelling of, basically can Matt Sydal overcome the Machine, and can the Machine become champion? And it was a great matchup. Great matchup back and forth. The tag team title match was great. The 51-50 match told a great story in its own right. It's like, can LAX, the new LAX, beat the OGs? Can the OGs still show that they have it? It definitely lived up being a street fight and being violent. The ending definitely adds more fuel to the fire for the story arc between both sides, because now the OGs are in possession of the tag team titles, even though they didn't win them, because they spray painted OGs on the belts, thus marking it as their property now. Sami Callihan, Pentagon, that was good. That was violent as heck. Probably the most violent match out of potentially the other two matches. I mean, the fact that they used freaking spikes, metal spikes in this, was unreal. And again, like I said, if you like your Lucha Underground action, you pretty much got it here. You really did. And in the main event, again, another great storytelling. Could Moose win? Could he win the big one? Which obviously that didn't happen, but you can see they're setting Moose up to win the championship, possibly either at Bound for Glory or at the next special edition of Impact. Basically the next special edition of Impact Wrestling, which, like I say, could be a no surrender theme, lockdown theme, whatever. But again, just like with Sydal and Cage, a good big man, little man matchup. And just overall, just from start to finish, tremendous job on Impact's part. And that's really all I can say about it. So, let me know what you guys think down below. I'll talk to you later. And Dalyxman, I think you're really going to like what you see.